Hi there. This is obviously not a guitar cover or lesson. I just figured I've had this channel for about just under 3 years now, and I've never actually sat down and spoke to the camera or told you anything about myself or anything, really answered any questions. So I figured I'd do that now. My name's Dean, and I've been running this channel for, just like I said, just under 3 years to more or less just kind of monitor myself progressing in guitar. I started it about a week after I'd started playing, and I release videos very rarely, to be fair. I'm very bad at that, but I've been releasing videos just to kind of monitor my own progress and to see how far I could really push myself to get better at the instrument. But I've had a number of questions from the few of you that actually follow me and like what I do, about gear, about myself, about what guitars I use, about what amplifier I use, what microphones I use, and whatnot. So I figured I'd actually sit down and address these after 3 years of you asking me. Because a lot of you have noticed, a lot of you who follow me have noticed that I go through a number of guitars in my videos, so I figured I'd start that. That would probably be the best place to start, is I'll take you through my guitars. But you'll also notice a number of edits in this, simply because I don't want to be walking in and off camera, so there'll be probably a number of quite abrupt cuts just between me getting a guitar, changing settings on the amp, or whatever. So let's get started. Okay, I'm back, and just before we start, I'm going to let you know that everything I'm playing is through a Marshall JCM 600 head with a Marshall 412 cabinet through a Rode NTG2 shotgun microphone. If I switched it on the amplifier or use any pedals, I'll let you know. Like, I've got an orange sitting here, I might use it at some point. I'll let you know if I do. Right. Brief history of my guitar collection before we get on to the main subject. I am a bit of a fanatic when it comes to like vintage lawsuit Japanese era guitars from the 70s through the 80s. Basically, I think they're really good value for money. They play really well, they are built immaculately, and they are, if as close to what you're going to get out of a high-end Gibson or Fender. Pretty much, if not better, honestly. Right, this guitar here is probably one of my newest additions, and it's slowly becoming one of my favourites. It's my main lead guitar I go to. It's a Yamaha SG-1000, built in 1982. Now these guitars, if you don't know, they were designed by Yamaha basically as they wanted to try something new. They wanted to try some sort of lead guitar, thick body, tone, and they weren't really getting anywhere with the earlier models. So they got in contact with Carlos Santana, and they said, "Can you try out these models?" And he went, "Yeah," and they kind of worked together for a number of years to produce what he used throughout most of the 80s and to record his Moonflower album, the Yamaha SG-2000. This is its kind of pretty much the same thing, except it uses set neck rather than through neck, and it's got slightly higher output pickups. But that's more or less all the differences. It's got ebony fretboard, and it's 2 Yamaha Alnico 5 pickups. It's also got coil taps, push-push coil taps on both pickups, so you've got really great tone variety on it, and the sustain is immaculate. Now throughout these videos I'll cut to like me playing, and I'll cut showing sound clips, but I'll more or less just talk, and then you'll see some edits where I will play a section or play a riff or lick or something like that, so you can hear what it sounds like. But I'm just kind of quickly going through, so this video doesn't take like 2 hours long. Haven't seen before, but this is a Fender Heartfield Talon, which is basically back in the very late 80s, early 90s, Fender decided to do Super Strat and metal range, and it didn't do too well. Not because they were bad, but mostly because people were like, Fender, what are you doing? That's really stupid. But they're actually pretty good guitars, and also back then Nirvana and Pearl Jam were getting big and everyone wanted to play Squier Strats and shit. Basically, this is a Floyd Rose 2, genuine Floyd Rose 2 equipped Super Strat with a 5-way selector, speed knobs, don't laugh. Yeah, it's a pretty good guitar, really fast neck, rosewood fingerboard, very slim profile neck. So, it's got a, I think it's a DiMarzio Super Distortion humbucker in the bridge, and 2 Fender owned, I think they're Fender Japanese made single coils. But you can correct me on that. Okay, this is the next guitar. Gorgeous looking guitar. You may have seen it in a couple of my videos earlier on, maybe in the second year, but it got damaged and I really couldn't use it for a good while. But this is the Aria Pro 2 YS300. I think it's 1983, but I'll have to recheck all my serial numbers. I forget the year for them. You'll also probably notice in that I forgot to record the video for the Fender. Yeah, that was really stupid, I forgot to hit record. But whatever. We're talking about this guitar. This guitar is a bolt-on neck, although it's designed to look like a through neck, so it looks great, but actually it's one of the best bolt-ons I've ever played. It's almost like a set neck, it's solid. Really quite good sustain, 24 frets, which is nice, and yeah, it's just a very nice, generally nice guitar. Not so great for leads, but has a nice effect with this switch here, which acts as a coil tap on the bridge and neck position, but if you put it in the middle, it reverses the phasing. So you can go into like an out of phase Peter Green style sound, which is really nice. Okay, now the next guitar is this. Now this is not a Japanese-made guitar. In fact, it's a Gibson. It's a Gibson 2006 Explorer with the burst buckers. Not much really more needs to be said there. It's a really, really good guitar. Generally good in pretty much every genre. I wouldn't recommend it if you were like a jazz player, but pretty much any rock, great lead guitar, better rhythm guitar, really, really good rhythm guitar, really heavy sounding, ebony fretboard, high output pickups, generally just very good. Not much more needs to be said there. Guitar I'm going to talk about. I do have about twice this amount, but I'm not actually going to show you them all, mostly because I can't be bothered miking up an acoustic guitar, of which I have 3, and a bass guitar. I don't have a bass amp. I usually just amp model for those, so there's no point in me showing you nothing. I can't let you hear how it sounds, but you can see a bass that was behind me earlier, but yeah. This is the guitar that really got me into Japanese-made instruments from the 80s and 70s. This guitar is the first guitar that I ever bought with my own money. It's a Tokai Breezy Sound, which is as close as you can pretty much get to a copy of a 57 Telecaster, without just buying a 57 Telecaster or commissioning the Fender Custom Shop to make you one. Identical in specs to the original, but obviously this one has been modified slightly by the last owner and previous owners. The neck pickup is a bare knuckle pickup instead of the original pickup that it came with. I still have the original, but I just haven't put it back in because I actually really like the warm sound of the bare knuckle. This control plate was, you've probably seen it in my earlier videos, was switched the other way around, but this guitar was damaged beyond like my repairing abilities, so I had to send it into a shop to get it fixed, and they switched the control plate back around. I quite liked it the other way because I could volume swell better, like a Strat, where the knobs are closer, but well, whatever. There's a screw missing, and this guitar is bashed to shit. This guitar's been rocked, but it's my favourite guitar that I own. It really is immaculate. So if you ever see one of these things going on eBay, I recommend you buy one. Or like your local music shop. If you see anything by Tokai from before like the 90s, go for it. They're brilliant, absolutely brilliant guitars. So I'll let you hear how this sounds. Okay, so that's pretty much it for my main guitars. I have a lot more, but that's kind of the ones I'll be mainly using, so I just figured I'd let you kind of know, because a lot of people ask, what guitar do you use? Well, that's what I use. Right, moving on from that, I would have done longer demos, but it's getting really late here. It's about 11 PM, so I'd really rather not be blaring an amplifier that loudly at this time. My neighbours might kill me, and that wouldn't be fun. Okay, so now I'll move on to some questions you guys might have had about videos or gear or whatever I used. I'll start with like equipment and stuff, because that's what I was already talking about with the guitars. What amps do you use? Like I said before, I use a Marshall JCM 600 through a Marshall 4x12 cabinet. I also have a Line 6 Spider 2 150 watts, which is alright, and get some decent tones out of it. And I have an Orange Micro Terror. All these amps are really different from each other. The Line 6 is of course like a modelling amp. It's super high saturated gains. It's just a practice amp really. It's alright. The Marshall's really vintage. It's really close to like the Plexis. That's why the 600 was designed. It's probably the most vintage Marshall you're going to be getting, unless you go and buy yourself like a JNP or something like that. It really is a really nice sounding amplifier, and you get some good tones out of that. And the gain goes to 20. I also then have the Orange Micro Terror, which is a nice little amp, really portable, but extremely loud. So yeah, that's always nice. What pedals do you use? Well, I actually only have two pedals. One, the Aria distortion pedal from like 1980 something. It's got a very 80s sound. If you want to sound like Def Leppard, then this is the one for you. And the best pedal ever invented of all time, the Ibanez TS9 Tube Screamer. I use this all the time. This is how I get my lead tones. This is the best pedal ever made. Buy one. How do you record? There's a number of ways I record, actually. I do a lot of recording outside of YouTube. That's not where all my recordings are. That's not all I've ever done. Sometimes I will mic up an amp. Just depends on how I think it's going to sound in the song. Sometimes, yeah, like I said, I'll mic up the amp like this. I usually use my Rode NTG2 simply because I don't have a Shure SM57. I really need to get one. My interface is a Line 6 HD Pro, which I use to record a lot of the online stuff now. Like, I'm working on 3 video game songs at the moment, and that's probably what I'll be using to record. I probably won't be micing an amp for it. I'll be amp modeling through HD model stuff that you get from Line 6. It's really, really good. Quite expensive, but in the end, I think it's worth it. I think the tones I can get out of that are really, really quite amazing. What camera do I use? I use a Panasonic HDC MDH1. This is actually the first video I'll ever film with this camera. I was actually just messing around with it, and I decided I'd film this because I think it was about time to do this type of video anyway. But this camera is a full HD SD card camera, which is a lot better than my last camera. I was using a great camera before actually, but it's old now and it was starting to fail. So it was damn it, that's going to annoy me. Canon XL1. That's the type of camera I had before, which is a really good camera, but it is showing its age now. The one I have is like made in 1998 or something, so it's 15 years old. I'm surprised it's still working. It was pretty much on its last legs kind of when I got it, so it's pretty much dead. I'm actually using its box right now as my footstool, because I don't have a footstool and this is the perfect size. So, yeah. Next, I'll kind of move on to some of the more asked questions, not just specific ones, but a lot of them are generally about guitars buying or guitar in general from beginners. Since my lessons that I did, they were all for beginners. They were all at the level I was at the time, so they're all for really, really quite low beginners. So we'll say, take for example, what guitar should I get first? This is a commonly asked question. No one can really tell you that. It's kind of up to you, but again, to someone that has no knowledge of guitars, when someone tells you, you have to decide it, you're like, how do I decide it? I can't decide. I don't know. I don't know. It depends on what you want to play. Like, if you came to me and said, hey, I want to play jazz and blues, I'm not going to tell you to go out and buy a Schecter. Vice versa, if you said, I want to play metal, I'm not going to tell you to get a Squier Strat. It just depends on what you want to do. Well, unless you're a massive Iron Maiden or Yngwie fan. It just depends on what you want to play. I recommend going to a music shop and bringing someone who knows how to play guitar. And kind of asking him, tell your friend or the person you know, family member, whatever, what you're kind of into. They'll kind of tell you, oh no, that's a piece of shit, or oh no, that's not bad. It's just down to personal preference, because I know people who like guitars that I hate, like Squier. I hate Squier. I would never buy a Squier, but I know people who love their first Squier that they got, their first Squier Stat Standard. I hate it. I think they're horrible guitars, but that's just me. Epiphone have gotten really good in the past like 8 years or so. They've been starting to get really, really good. So I would recommend an Epiphone, and they're quite versatile. Epiphone SG is probably a good shout, because the SG design will never kind of go out of fashion. It's always going to be pretty good. And if you don't want that sort of thick tone of a Les Paul, the SG is pretty versatile. Or a good shout again would be Mexican Strat. Fender Mexican made Strat. They're a little more expensive than like Epiphone or whatnot, but not much, and it's not a bad guitar at all by any means. It's easily an intermediate type guitar. But a lot of people are under the impression of, well, if I spend 150 quid on a guitar, then if I don't like it, it's only 150 quid. Whereas if I spend, say, 300 on a guitar and I don't like it, that's 300 quid. Yeah, there is that. But a lot of the time is, you'll buy a £150 guitar and you'll hate to play it, because it will be hard to play. Basically, I would never spend under maybe, actually that's a lie, because I have spent under, but roughly, for a new guitar, if you want to get something that is at least going to be playable, 250 quid. You should probably put that as kind of your lowest mark, say 250. Anything lower than that, sure, people have liked them in the past, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's going to play bad, it's not going to age well at all. In saying that, I have bought guitars for a lot less. I bought my classical guitar that I love, my Yamaha C40, was only £60. So, you know, take that information for what it's worth. I also often get asked, when are the tutorials coming back? Eventually. The plan is, there will be a lesson for every single cover I'm doing. Because I did probably notice that I moved on to just doing song covers rather than a whole half-hour lesson or whatever. There will be a lesson for every single song I do. Eventually. So, when it is, I couldn't tell you, but I can tell you there will be one. So if you say, when are you going to do a lesson for, I don't know, Prince of Persia or something like that, there will be a lesson. Eventually. Is all I can say. There will be one eventually. Also, are you going to do this song, are you going to do that song? Probably. Maybe. Eventually. I don't know. I don't really do requests. I have tabbed out songs. Ages. Sorry, I keep burping. I don't know why. I've tabbed out songs in the past years ago for like the Dark Messenger from Final Fantasy IX. I tabbed that out ages ago. It's sitting on my computer ready to go. I just haven't ever got around to recording it. Yeah, I get it done eventually, is all I can say. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. I hope this was somewhat insightful. If anything you can take away from this video would be buy Tokai, buy Yamaha SG. I like Marshall. I like Dr. Pepper. See you later.